If you only knew the power of the dark side, it is your destiny.
Learning about the local statistics and on overdose, death, crime in our community is really one of the things that prompted us to pull together this summit. But the other one was the experience that we had in Columbus. We took a pretty large group of contingent to Columbus last spring, and it was some school folks, some community folks, some youth athletic people, and law enforcement, and we had a group of 10 or 11 people. And I think we were probably the largest community represented at that summit. And it was there that I heard our Attorney General address the crowd and speak about the heroin issue that is sweeping our state. And the Attorney General talked a lot about the drug cartel and how heroin is distributed. And that really touched a nerve with me and those in attendance. And so we wanted to make sure, and we're very glad that he's here, that you have a chance to hear some of that information too. So it is with great pride and pleasure that I introduce the Attorney General for the state of Ohio, the Honorable Mike DeWine.
Thank you very much. Thank you for doing this. I know you all have had the opportunity to listen to this great panel of different speakers. I had the chance to listen, I think, to the last 3 speakers. I don't pretend to be an expert. I do bring some experience and some background going back to when I was a county prosecuting attorney in Greene County, my home county, back in the 1970s, and then 20 years in the United States Congress, where I served on the Judiciary Committee, first in the U.S. House, and then in the United States Senate, and then now for the last little over 3.5 years as Attorney General of Ohio. I've heard Danielle's talk before, but every single time she talks about Cole, talks about her son, I am very, very deeply moved. And I think as a parent, her experience is just, parents' worst nightmare. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about what she is doing for our office and why I asked her to join our team and what I think she is bringing to this whole struggle. This is a different epidemic, drug epidemic. And you've heard many of the reasons why it is, or what is different about it. Heroin, when I was a county prosecuting attorney, is something we would expect to find in our cities. Small number of people, some of them long-term heroin addicts. We looked upon them as this, as sad, very pitiful, but it was always somewhere else. My county, Greene County, we thought it was all over in Dayton. The heroin epidemic today, as you've heard, is everywhere. I travel throughout this state. A couple weeks ago, I was in 15 small southeast Ohio counties, and there was not one of them that did not have a heroin problem. There wasn't one of them when I talked to the sheriff, or talked to the prosecutor, or talked to the coroner, who didn't tell me that about a case, many cases, and then one had occurred quite recently, I think, in every single county. So it's everywhere. It cuts across every economic group, every racial group, gender. It can occur in any family, in any place. I think we're starting to make some progress by recognizing this problem. 6 months ago, or a year ago, we didn't have, I think, the understanding of it. At least the public didn't have the understanding. We were seeing in our crime lab, I run the state crime lab, we were seeing it in drugs that were coming in. As I know, the coroner who spoke earlier here from Hamilton County, she sees it in her lab as well. So it is different. It's different in that respect. The other thing that's different is how cheap it is. try to outline why we have a heroin epidemic that's so pervasive and so widespread in Ohio and across the country. I'm not sure I can answer the question why, but I can note two things. Number one, that heroin is cheap. Mexican drug cartels, they have a perfect business model. And a perfect business model to kill a lot of people, and a perfect business model to make a lot of money. They grow it now in Mexico, a certain area of Mexico. It is processed there, it is brought up across the border, brought into the United States by the Mexican drug cartel, brought into Cincinnati, brought into every major city in the state. And depending on the city, the Mexican drug cartels either sell it to the local drug dealer, or in some cases have their own network set up. It's a perfect business model because when someone starts, it's cheap, but your need for it and your desire for it, the requirement to stay normal keeps going up and up. So you can start with $10, $15, $20, and then late stage heroin addict, you're way, way beyond that. And you're to the point where you're breaking into someone's house every morning when you get up, and you're a heroin addict, you have one thought on your mind, one thought only. It's not about your family, it's not about your kids, it's not about your parents, it's not about your job. All it is about, its focus is on getting enough money that day to get the drugs and then be able to start all over again the next day. 90% of the crime, I would say, in most areas of the state is caused in one way or the other by drugs. Either the person's high on drugs or the person is trying to break into your house because they desperately need to get those drugs for another day. So it is cheap. If you have the right number and you know where to call, I'm told, in virtually any place in the state, you can pick up the phone and call, and the drugs will be delivered to your house or to some convenient place for you at a cheap price. I liken it to pizza. It costs about the same, and it's as prevalent and as easy to get as pizza is. So we have a perfect business model. Drug dealers know what they're doing. Mexican drug cartels know what they're doing. The second reason is more hard for me to understand, frankly. And that is that the barrier that used to exist that stopped even people who are taking drugs from doing heroin seems to be lower. Again, when I was a county prosecuting attorney, we would arrest people and they were drug dealers. In some cases they were users. In some cases both. You would start talking to them and talk about the different drugs that they were doing, and you'd get to heroin and they almost inevitably would say, no, you think I'm crazy? DeWine, do you think I'm crazy? I don't do heroin. I don't want to die. I wouldn't do that stuff. So there was that psychological barrier, and for whatever reason, that barrier is gone. Because I'm the Attorney General, most people associate what our office does with law enforcement, which would be accurate. We run the state crime lab. So, one of the things that we do in regard to drugs is we've lessened the time that it takes to get the analysis back to the county prosecuting attorney, so the county prosecuting attorney can go ahead and file charges. So we do that. We are involved in our BCI special agents who work for the Attorney General are involved in a number of multi-jurisdiction anti-drug task forces, law enforcement groups across the state. The other thing that we have done is we have created our own heroin unit, a heroin unit that is there to assist local law enforcement. Because this is a public meeting, I can't talk everything or explain everything that unit does. But what we do is provide expertise, and we provide technical expertise and the people to help local law enforcement when they're trying to move up the chain, when they're trying to get the bigger drug dealers, which is many times very difficult to do and many times takes a long, long time. So we are supplying that assistance to local law enforcement, and we have a number of ongoing investigations. Now, having said all that, we're not going to rest our way out of this problem. Law enforcement can't solve this problem. sheriff, the prosecutor, chief of police, the attorney general, the governor, the president. None of us can solve this problem. We can do what we do. We can try to do a better job with law enforcement, and we're working on that every single day. But ultimately, it's going to come back to you. So I congratulate all of you for being here. We need more of these meetings across the state. We need to organize at the grassroots level. I've become convinced after watching first the opiate epidemic and then moving up, and then the heroin epidemic. It's not one than the other, and we've had both of them for a while, obviously. But having watched these, what I'm convinced of is that the only really effective way to combat this is to prevent more people, stop more people from becoming addicts. In the communities where I've seen, I wouldn't say totally turn around, but where I've seen some really significant progress, these have been communities that have a grassroots effort. Danielle put one together in Clark County. She and others put that together. Every county is different. Every community is different. And what will work in one community may not work as well in another. You have to adapt those programs to your individual community. What we do in the Attorney General's office in this regard is I have three individuals, three very dedicated women, Jennifer Bittinger, Heidi Riggs, Danielle Smoot. Every day they work to try to help local grassroots groups figure out what to do. Each one of them comes out of a local county where they were an integral part of putting together a grassroots group that focused on prevention and focused on education. That to me is what we have to have more of. And so I have these three individuals who work for me because we want to replicate, not necessarily duplicate or perfect, but we want to take these ideas out to other communities. And so that's what we do every single day. It's what they do every single day, is to try to help local communities come up with a grassroots effort. In the 1980s, when I was in the U.S. House of Representatives, I served on President Reagan's National Commission on Drug-Free Schools. Lots changed since then. But one thing that has not changed is the conclusion by this commission. One of the main conclusions was that if we're serious about dealing with the drug problem, if we're serious about having fewer and fewer of our kids start on these drugs, we have to do something every single year. It's not enough to do a program in the 5th grade and one in the 9th grade or the 7th grade and the 11th grade or whatever. The only thing that's really effective, proved to be very effective, is to do it every single year. You start with whatever is age appropriate in kindergarten and you continue all the way up. Doesn't mean it has to happen with the schools. We look to the schools many times to do everything for us. But I think it has to happen with the cooperation of schools. And the grassroots groups that I have seen that work are usually led by a very passionate, grieving mom or dad who decides that they're going to do everything in their power so that other families don't suffer the horrible tragedy that they live with every day and they'll live with for the rest of their life. Spearheaded by these moms, these dads. It needs to involve schools, but also needs to involve the professional groups, the service groups, business community, and finally, the churches. They have to become involved and they have to become engaged as well. Where it has worked has been where our community finally got so sick and so sick of seeing their kids die that they said, we have to do something about it. And unfortunately, it usually has to get that bad before a community will do that. So to me, that, based on what I've seen in my travels around the state and the contacts I have around the state, that's what needs to be done. So thank you for being here. Thank you very much for your dedication. This meeting is important, but what really is important is what happens next. And then after that, and then after that. This is not anything for the faint-hearted, and it's not for anyone who thinks you're going to find a solution in 6 months. But there are ways to make progress, and I just would urge you to do that. Focus on education, focus on prevention. There's no doubt we need more treatment in this state, as has been mentioned by several speakers. And there's no doubt law enforcement has to do what it does. But what you can do directly is that grassroots effort. And quite frankly, you're the only ones who can do it. Thank you very much.